a Wikividi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Reinhard Heydrich. Reinhard Tristan Eugen Heydrich was a high-ranking German Nazi official during World War II, and a main architect of the Holocaust. He was an SS Obergruppenführer und General der Polizei as well as chief of the Reich Main Security Office. He was also Stellvertreter and a Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia. Heydrich served as president of the International Criminal Police Commission, and chaired the January 1942 Wannsee Conference, which formalized plans for the final solution to the Jewish question, the deportation and genocide of all Jews in German-occupied Europe. Many historians regard him as the darkest figure within the Nazi elite. Adolf Hitler described him as the man with the iron heart. He was the founding head of the Sicherheitsdienst, an intelligence organization charged with seeking out and neutralizing resistance to the Nazi Party via arrests, deportations, and murders. He helped organize Kristallnacht, a series of coordinated attacks against Jews throughout Nazi Germany and parts of Austria on 9–10 November 1938. The attacks, carried out by SA stormtroopers and civilians, presaged the Holocaust. Upon his arrival in Prague, Heydrich sought to eliminate opposition to the Nazi occupation by suppressing Czech culture and deporting and executing members of the Czech resistance. He was directly responsible for the Einsatzgruppen, the special task forces which traveled in the wake of the German armies and murdered over 2 million people, including 1.3 million Jews, by mass shooting and gassing. He was critically wounded in an ambush in Prague on 27 May 1942 by a British Special Operations Executive trained team of Czech and Slovak soldiers who had been sent by the Czechoslovak government in exile to kill him in Operation Anthropoid. He died from his injuries a week later. Nazi intelligence falsely linked the assassins to the villages of Leditz and Lazaki. Both villages were razed. All men and boys over the age of 16 were shot, and all but a handful of the women and children were deported and killed in Nazi concentration camps. Early life. Reinhard Tristan Eugen Heydrich was born in 1904 in Halle an der Saale to composer and opera singer Richard Bruno Heydrich and his wife, Elisabeth Anna Maria Amalia Heydrich. His father was Protestant and his mother was Roman Catholic. His two forenames were patriotic musical tributes. Reinhard referred to the tragic hero from his father's opera Amen, and Tristan stems from Richard Wagner's Tristan und Isolde. Heydrich's third name, Eugen, was his late maternal grandfather's forename. Heydrich's family held social standing and substantial financial means. Music was a part of Heydrich's everyday life. His father founded the Halle Conservatory of Music, Theatre and Teaching, and his mother taught piano there. Heydrich developed a passion for the violin and carried that interest into adulthood. He impressed listeners with his musical talent. His father was a German nationalist who instilled patriotic ideas in his three children, but was not affiliated with any political party until after World War I. The Heydrich household was strict. As a youth, he engaged his younger brother, Heinz, in mock fencing duels. He excelled in his schoolwork, especially in science, at the Reform Gymnasium. A talented athlete, he became an expert swimmer and fencer. He was shy, insecure, and was frequently bullied for his high-pitched voice and Roma Jewish ancestry. The latter claim earned him the nickname, Moses Handel. In 1918, World War I ended with Germany's defeat. In late February 1919, civil unrest, including strikes and clashes between communist and anti-communist groups, took place in Heydrich's hometown of Halle. Under Defense Minister Gustav Nosk's directives, a right-wing paramilitary unit was formed and ordered to recapture Halle. Heydrich, then 15 years old, joined Merker's Volunteer Rifles. When the skirmishes ended, Heydrich was part of the force assigned to protect private property. Little is known about his role, but the events left a strong impression. It was a political awakening for him. He joined the Deutsche Völkischer Schutz- und Trutzbund, an anti-Semitic organization. As a result of the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, hyperinflation spread across Germany and many lost their life savings. Halle was not spared. By 1921, few townspeople there could afford a musical education at Bruno Heydrich's conservatory. This led to a financial crisis for the Heydrich family. Naval career. In 1922 Heydrich joined the German Navy, taking advantage of the security, structure, and pension it offered. He became a naval cadet at Kiel, Germany's primary naval base. On the 1st of April 1924 he was promoted to senior midshipman and sent to officer training at the Naval Academy Mervik. In 1926 he advanced to the rank of ensign and was assigned as a signals officer on the Battleship, the flagship of Germany's North Sea Fleet. With the promotion came greater recognition. He received good evaluations from his superiors and had few problems with other crewmen. He was promoted on the 1st of July 1928 to the rank of sub-lieutenant. The increased rank fueled his ambition and arrogance. Heydrich became notorious for his countless affairs. In December 1930 he attended a rowing club ball and met Lena von Osten. They became romantically involved, and soon announced their engagement. Lena was already a Nazi Party follower. She had attended her first rally in 1929. In 1931 Heydrich was charged with conduct unbecoming to an officer and gentleman, for breaking an engagement promised to a woman he had known for 6 months before the von Osten engagement. Admiral Erich Raeder dismissed Heydrich from the Navy that April. The dismissal devastated Heydrich, who found himself without career prospects. He kept the engagement and married Lena in December 1931. Career in the SS and military. In 1931, Heinrich Himmler began setting up a counterintelligence division of the SS. Acting on the advice of his associate Karl von Eberstein, who was von Osten's friend, Himmler agreed to interview Heydrich, but cancelled their appointment at the last minute. Lena ignored this message, packed Heydrich's suitcase, and sent him to Munich. Eberstein met Heydrich at the railway station and took him to see Himmler. Himmler asked Heydrich to convey his ideas for developing an SS intelligence service. Himmler was so impressed that he hired Heydrich immediately. Although the starting monthly salary of 180 Reichsmarks was low, Heydrich decided to take the job, because Lena's family supported the Nazi movement, and the quasi-military and revolutionary nature of the post appealed to him. At first he had to share an office and typewriter with a colleague, but by 1932 Heydrich was earning 290 Reichsmarks a month, a salary he described as comfortable. As his power and influence grew throughout the 1930s, his salary grew commensurately. By 1938 his income increased to 17,371.53 Reichsmarks annually. His NSDAP number was 544,916 and his SS number was 10,120. Heydrich later received a Totenkopfring from Himmler for his service. On the 1st of August 1931 Heydrich began his job as chief of the Newark service. He set up office at the Brown House, the Nazi Party headquarters in Munich. By October he had created a network of spies and informers for intelligence gathering purposes and to obtain information to be used as blackmail to further political aims. Information on thousands of people was recorded on index cards and stored at the Brown House. To mark the occasion of Heydrich's December wedding, Himmler promoted him to the rank of SS Sturmbannführer. In 1932, rumors were spread by Heydrich's enemies of alleged Jewish ancestry. Wilhelm Canaris said he had obtained photocopies proving Heydrich's Jewish ancestry, but these photocopies never surfaced. Nazi Gauleiter Rudolf Jordan claimed Heydrich was not a pure Aryan. Within the Nazi organization such innuendo could be damning, even for the head of the Reich's counterintelligence service. Gregor Strasser passed the allegations on to the Nazi Party's racial expert, Achim Jerk, who investigated Heydrich's genealogy. Jerk reported that Heydrich was of German origin and free from any colored and Jewish blood. He insisted that the rumors were baseless. Even so, Heydrich privately engaged SD member Ernst Hoffmann to further investigate and dispel the rumors. Gestapo and SD. In mid-1932, Himmler appointed Heydrich chief of the renamed security service, the Sicherheitsdienst. Heydrich's counterintelligence service grew into an effective machine of terror and intimidation. With Hitler striving for absolute power in Germany, Himmler and Heydrich wished to control the political police forces of all 17 German states. They began with Bavaria. In 1933, Heydrich gathered some of his men from the SD and together they stormed police headquarters in Munich and took over the organization using intimidation tactics. Himmler became the Munich police chief and Heydrich became the commander of Department 4, the political police. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, and through a series of decrees became Germany's Führer und Reichskanzler. The first concentration camps, which were originally intended to house political opponents, were established in early 1933. By year's end there were over 50 camps. Hermann Göring founded the Gestapo in 1933 as a Prussian police force. When Göring transferred full authority over the Gestapo to Himmler in April 1934, it immediately became an instrument of terror under the SS's purview. Himmler named Heydrich to head the Gestapo on the 22nd of April 1934. On the 9th of June 1934, Rudolf Hess declared the SD the official Nazi intelligence service. Crushing the Saar. Beginning in April 1934, and at Hitler's request, Heydrich and Himmler began building a dossier on Sturmabteilung leader Ernst Röhm in an effort to remove him as a rival for party leadership. At this point, the SS was still part of the Saar, the early Nazi paramilitary organization which now numbered over 3 million men. At Hitler's direction, Heydrich, Himmler, Göring, and Victor Lutz drew up lists of those who should be killed, starting with 7 top Saar officials and including many more. On the 30th of June 1934 the SS and Gestapo acted in coordinated mass arrests that continued for 2 days. Röhm was shot without trial, along with the leadership of the Saar. The purge became known as the Night of the Long Knives. Up to 200 people were killed in the action. Lutz was appointed Saar's new head, and it was converted into a sports and training organization. With the Saar out of the way, Heydrich began building the Gestapo into an instrument of fear. He improved his index card system, creating categories of offenders with color-coded cards. The Gestapo had the authority to arrest citizens on the suspicion that they might commit a crime, and the definition of a crime was at their discretion. The Gestapo law, passed in 1936, gave police the right to act extra-legally. This led to the sweeping use of Schutzhaft, protective custody, a euphemism for the power to imprison people without judicial proceedings. The courts were not allowed to investigate or interfere. The Gestapo was considered to be acting legally as long as it was carrying out the leadership's will. People were arrested arbitrarily, sent to concentration camps, or killed. Himmler began developing the notion of a Germanic religion and wanted SS members to leave the church. In early 1936, Heydrich left the Catholic Church. His wife, Lena, had already done so the year before. Heydrich not only felt he could no longer be a member, but came to consider the church's political power and influence a danger to the state. Consolidating the police forces. On the 17th of June 1936 all police forces throughout Germany were united, following Hitler's appointment of Himmler as chief of German police. With this appointment by the Führer, Himmler and his deputy, Heydrich, became 2 of the most powerful men in the internal administration of Germany. Himmler immediately reorganized the police into 2 groups, the Ordnungspolizei, consisting of both the National Uniformed Police and the Municipal Police, and the Sicherheitspolizei, consisting of the Geheime Staatspolizei and Kriminalpolizei. At that point, Heydrich was head of the SiPo and SD. Heinrich Müller was the Gestapo's operations chief. Heydrich was assigned to help organize the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin. The games were used to promote the propaganda aims of the Nazi regime. Goodwill ambassadors were sent to countries that were considering a boycott. Anti-Jewish violence was forbidden for the duration, and newsstands were required to stop displaying copies of Der Stürmer. For his part in the game's success, Heydrich was awarded the Deutsches Olympiaehrenzeichen or German Olympic Games decoration. In January 1937 Heydrich directed the SD to secretly begin collecting and analyzing public opinion and report back its findings. He then had the Gestapo carry out house searches, arrests, and interrogations, thus in effect exercising control over public opinion. In February 1938, when the Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg resisted Hitler's proposed merger with Germany, Heydrich intensified the pressure on Austria by organizing Nazi demonstrations and distributing propaganda in Vienna stressing the common Germanic blood of the two countries. In the Anschluss on the 12th of March, Hitler declared the unification of Austria with Nazi Germany. In mid-1939 Heydrich created the Stiftung Nordau Foundation to obtain real estate for the SS and security police to use as guest houses and vacation spots. The Wannsee Villa, which the Stiftung Nordau acquired in November 1940, was the site of the Wannsee Conference. At the conference, senior Nazi officials formalized plans to deport and exterminate all Jews in German-occupied territory, and those countries not yet conquered. This action was to be coordinated among the representatives from the Nazi state agencies present. At the meeting, on the 27th of September 1939 the SD and StPO were folded into the new Reich Main Security Office or Reichssicherheitsamt, which was placed under Heydrich's control. The title of Chef der Sicherheitspolizei und des SD or CSSD was conferred on Heydrich on 1 October. Heydrich became the president of the ICPC on 24 August 1940, and its headquarters were transferred to Berlin. He was promoted to SS Obergruppenführer und General der Polizei on 24 September 1941. Red Army purges. In 1936, Heydrich learned that a top-ranking Soviet officer was plotting to overthrow Joseph Stalin. Sensing an opportunity to strike a blow at both the Soviet Army and Admiral Canaris of Germany's Abwehr, Heydrich decided that the Russian officers should be unmasked. He discussed the matter with Himmler and both in turn brought it to Hitler's attention. But the information Heydrich had received was actually misinformation planted by Stalin himself in an attempt to legitimize his planned purges of the Red Army's high command. Stalin ordered one of his best NKVD agents, General Nikolai Skoblin, to pass Heydrich false information suggesting that Marshal Mikhail Tukhachevsky and other Soviet generals were plotting against Stalin. Hitler approved Heydrich's plan to act on the information immediately. Heydrich's SD forged documents and letters implicated Tukhachevsky and other Red Army commanders. The material was delivered to the NKVD. The Great Purge of the Red Army followed on Stalin's orders. While Heydrich believed they had successfully deluded Stalin into executing or dismissing 35,000 of his officer corps. The importance of Heydrich's part is a matter of speculation and conjecture. Soviet military prosecutors did not use the forged documents against the generals in their secret trial. They instead relied on false confessions extorted or beaten out of the defendants. Night and Fog Decree. By late 1940, German armies had swept through most of Western Europe. The following year, Heydrich's SD was given responsibility for carrying out the Nacht und Nebel Decree. According to the decree, persons endangering German security were to be arrested in a maximally discreet way, under the cover of night and fog. People disappeared without a trace, with none told of their whereabouts or fate. For each prisoner, the SD had to fill in a questionnaire that listed personal information, country of origin, and the details of their crimes against the Reich. This questionnaire was placed in an envelope inscribed with a seal reading Nacht und Nebel, and submitted to the Reich Main Security Office. In the WVHA Central Inmate File, as in many camp files, these prisoners would be given a special, covert prisoner code, as opposed to the code for POW, felon, Jew, gypsy, etc. The decree remained in effect after Heydrich's death. The exact number of people who vanished under it has never been positively established, but it is estimated to be 7,000. Acting Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia. On the 27th of September 1941, Heydrich was appointed Deputy Reich Protector of the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and assumed control of the territory. The Reich Protector, Konstantin von Neurath, remained the territory's titular head, but was sent on leave because Hitler, Himmler, and Heydrich felt his soft approach to the Czechs had promoted anti-German sentiment and encouraged anti-German resistance via strikes and sabotage. Upon his appointment, Heydrich told his aides, "We will Germanize the Czech vermin." Heydrich came to Prague to enforce policy, fight resistance to the Nazi regime, and keep up production quotas of Czech motors and arms that were extremely important to the German war effort. He viewed the area as a bulwark of Germandom and condemned the Czech resistance's stabs in the back. To realize his goals, Heydrich demanded racial classification of those who could and could not be Germanized. He explained, making this Czech garbage into Germans must give way to methods based on racist thought. Heydrich started his rule by terrorizing the population. 92 people were executed within 3 days of his arrival in Prague. Their names appeared on posters throughout the occupied region. Almost all avenues by which Czechs could express their Czech culture in public were closed. According to Heydrich's estimate, between 4,000 and 5,000 people were arrested. By February 1942, those who were not executed were sent to Mauthausen concentration camp, where only 4% of Czech prisoners survived the war. In March 1942, further sweeps against Czech cultural and patriotic organizations, the military, and the intelligentsia resulted in the practical paralysis of Czech resistance. Although small disorganized cells of central leadership of home resistance survived, only the communist resistance was able to function in a coordinated manner. The terror also served to paralyze resistance in society, with public and widespread reprisals against any action resisting the German rule. Heydrich's brutal policies during that time quickly earned him the nickname, the Butcher of Prague. As acting Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, Heydrich applied carrot-and-stick methods. Labor was reorganized on the basis of the German Labor Front. Heydrich used equipment confiscated from the Czech organization Sokol to organize events for workers. Food rations and free shoes were distributed, pensions were increased, and free Saturdays were introduced. Unemployment insurance was established for the first time. The black market was suppressed. Those associated with it or the resistance movement were tortured or executed. Heydrich labeled them economic criminals and enemies of the people, which helped gain him support. Conditions in Prague and the rest of the Czech lands were relatively peaceful under Heydrich, and industrial output increased. Still, those measures could not hide shortages and increasing inflation. Reports of growing discontent multiplied. Despite public displays of goodwill towards the populace, privately Heydrich left no illusions about his eventual goal. This entire area will one day be definitely German, and the Czechs have nothing to expect here. Eventually up to 2/3 of the populace were to be either removed to regions of Russia or exterminated after Nazi Germany won the war. Bohemia and Moravia faced annexation directly into the German Reich. The Czech workforce was exploited as Nazi conscripted labor. More than 100,000 workers were removed from unsuitable jobs and conscripted by the Ministry of Labor. By December 1941, Czechs could be called to work anywhere within the Reich. Between April and November 1942, 79,000 Czech workers were taken in this manner for work within Nazi Germany. Also, in February 1942, the workday was increased from 8 to 12 hours. Heydrich was, for all intents and purposes, military dictator of Bohemia and Moravia. His changes to the government structure left President Emil Lachar and his cabinet virtually powerless. He often drove alone in a car with an open roof, a show of his confidence in the occupation forces and in his government's effectiveness. Brought to you by Wikividi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?